One of the most bizarre reports of unusual phenomena occurred in 1976 in the Spanish Canary Islands. Although the case features a most extraordinary description of aliens and their craft, the occurrence is extremely reliable in that it includes multiple witnesses, and a medical doctor and his taxicab driver both view a transparent sphere with two tall alien beings. The strange phenomena began on the night of June 22, 1976, as residents of Tenerife, La Palma, and La Gomera began reporting the sighting of unusual lights in the sky. These lights, and their maneuvers, were different from anything seen before. Newspaper headlines the next morning proclaimed that thousands of people had witnessed a spectacular phenomenon that lasted 20 minutes. The most sensational aspect was the sighting of the aforementioned sphere occupied with aliens. 3 days later, the commanding general of the Canary Island Air Zone named an investigative adjutant to make sense of the events. His findings were forwarded by a Spanish Air Force general to journalist J.J. Benitez in 1976. And the details of the case quickly reached beyond the containment of the Canaries to the outside world. Benitez's investigation would be the basis of his book, UFOs, Official Documents of the Spanish Government. The case would gain momentum in 1994, when files of the investigation were released as part of the unveiling of Spanish records, a type of Freedom of Information Act. This report was massive, containing over 100 pages of testimony, evaluations, drawings, and more. The official Air Force report was headlined by depositions of 14 witnesses. A type of standard was established with witness reliability based on their social status. A doctor's report was considered a high priority, whereas a common laborer's report gave little, if any, credence. In this particular case, this unfair standard did not take away from the acceptance of the facts, since all involved were in full agreement as to what they saw. The report was very detailed, and chronologically edited. The first report of the Canary Island UFO came from the Navy's armed escort ship, the Atrevida. The ship was located off the coast of Fuerteventura Island. The ship's captain gave a detailed report of what he and his crew observed at 9:27 p.m. on June 22. The entire crew saw an extremely bright yellow-blue light, moving from the shore in the direction of the ship, located 3.5 miles at sea. Several of the crewmen at first thought they saw a conventional aircraft with its landing lights on. The lights faded, and a type of beam began to rotate, similar to a lighthouse effect. Afterward, an intense halo of yellow and blue could be seen from the fantastic craft. Amazingly, the crew watched the craft for a full 40 minutes. The craft seemed to be playing tricks with its lights, as they constantly changed from one form to another. Even though the light show was observed for a long period of time, no signature was evident on the ship's radar of any flying craft. Only a few minutes later, the same phenomenon was seen by residents of the Canary Islands proper. The bulk of the sightings was by citizens of 3 villages, Galdar, Las Rosas, and Aguite. A cross-section of professions were involved: a medical doctor, schoolteacher, farmer, taxi driver, and one housewife. A thorough search of records by the investigator adjutant determined that there was no aerial traffic or military exercises at the time of the reports that could possibly account for the unusual activity. The adjutant, for the sake of clarity, divided the investigation into 2 different categories. One was the larger craft observed by ship crewmen and others, and the second the smaller globe with the aliens aboard. By his own admission, and consistent with human nature, the adjutant had no problem believing the reports of the larger craft, but had problems accepting the orb with the aliens. The investigator general's last word on the subject was, the fact that a very strange and peculiar aerial phenomena occurred on the night of June 22 is a true and proven fact, as incredible as its behavior and conditions may seem. Obviously, by his prior statement, the investigator had accepted the large craft seen by crewmen and others, but fell short in addressing the alien-occupied craft. The incredible account of the sphere was submitted by Dr. Francisco Padron Leon, from the city of Guia. His report is the most voluminous of the entire investigation. The doctor's background was thoroughly investigated, and he was found to be an upstanding sane professional, whose word was considered beyond question. Padron had been called to make a house call, and commissioned a cab to take him to the location, the town of Los Rosas. As they rode along, the doctor and cab driver were engaged in light conversation. Suddenly, the car lights pointed out a slightly luminous object in the shape of a sphere. The object was either landed, or hovering just above the ground. The object was made of a totally transparent and crystalline-like material. The doctor and driver both observed stars through the sphere. The object was bluish in color, with a radius of about 100 feet. The lower part of the orb contained a platform of aluminum-like material with 3 consoles. At each side of the center, there were 2 huge figures from 8 to 10 feet tall. They were dressed in red. The beings were humanoid in shape, with large heads covered with a type of helmet. The doctor, hardly believing his own eyes, asked for confirmation from the driver. "Are you seeing what I am?" he asked. The driver exclaimed, "My God! What is that?" The cab was only a short distance from the patient's house, and upon arriving, the doctor observed a type of bluish smoke coming from a tube rising through the center of the object. The sphere began to grow to an enormous shape as it began to ascend. The doctor ran into the house and told the family about what he had seen. Running outside, they observed the orb now extremely high in the sky. It reached an enormous speed, accelerating toward Tenerife. Finally, it dissolved into a smaller size and disappeared. Another witness, who was a relative of the patient, was watching television when suddenly the screen went blank, and her dogs began to bark outside. Running to a window, she saw the doctor's cab, and a blue sphere above it. She also noted that the sphere was transparent, with 2 beings inside. Shocked, she closed the windows and doors, and began to pray. There were several other sightings of a similar nature throughout the year of 1976 on the island. The final official report was ambiguous at best. The observance of the craft by all who saw it was accepted as genuine, although no earthly explanation was offered for its unique look and behavior. On the other hand, the witnesses of the smaller orb with aliens were classified as totally reliable and beyond question. But the actual occurrence of the beings was questioned. In other words, the witnesses were telling the truth, but what they saw was too far-fetched to believe. No other explanation was forthcoming on an official level, and the Canary Island phenomena remains today as an authentic, well-documented sighting with multiple witnesses. What are your thoughts? Please leave a comment below the video. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.